ikraha fi din. That is the basic Quranic teaching regarding the issue of freedom of conscience with regard to accepting religion. When the people of Mecca began to accept Islam, the reaction of the powers that be was persecution and sometimes murder. So, this was Abu Jahl's response. He ended up killing Sumayya, we know that, for no other reason than that she had left his ancestral religion. And so now this brings us to the issue of apostasy, which is a thornier issue. Now, we know that the dominant position among the fuqaha is that the penalty for apostasy from Islam is death. And it's an issue that has been reopened in recent times. And I'd like to take you in a very summary fashion through the arguments upon which the controversy has been reopened. And like everything, we need to first look at the Quran. And with regard to this issue, we have to also first clarify the point: is the penalty for apostasy a had penalty or ta'zir? Is it a fixed legal penalty? Or is it something that is up to the discretion of the ruler or the judge? If we look at the Quranic verses on the subject of apostasy, it's a subject that's discussed at least 20 times, maybe more. It's a repeated theme. Yet, wherever it is mentioned, with one exception, there is a penalty described for it, but the penalty is always in terms of the hereafter. Let me give you an example of that. In Surah Al-Baqarah, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولا يزالون يقاتلونكم حتى يردوكم عن دينكم إن استطاعوا ومن يرتدد منكم عن دينه فيمت وهو كافر فأولئك حبطت أعمالهم في الدنيا والآخرة وأولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. This is the end of a verse that's talking about fighting. And the context was the people of Mecca, and they will continue to fight you until they turn you back from your religion if they are able. And whoever of you reverts from his religion to disbelief and dies while he is a disbeliever, for those, their deeds have become worthless in this world and the hereafter, and those are the companions of the fire. They will abide therein eternally. And then this next passage, it's a little bit long, but it has a number of key points, so I'm going to take the trouble to recite all of it. In Surah Al-Imran, وكيف يهدي الله قوما كفروا بعد إيمانهم وشهدوا أن الرسول حق وجاءهم البينات والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين أولئك جزاؤهم أن عليهم لعنة الله والملائكة والناس أجمعين خالدين فيها لا يخفف عنهم العذاب ولا هم ينظرون إلا الذين تابوا من بعد ذلك وأصلحوا فإن الله غفور رحيم إن الذين كفروا بعد إيمانهم ثم ازدادوا كفرا لن تقبل توبتهم وأولئك هم الضالون إن الذين كفروا وماتوا وهم كفار فلن يقبل من أحدهم ملء الأرض ذهبا ولو افتدى به أولئك لهم عذاب أليم وما لهم من ناصرين. how shall Allah guide a people who disbelieved after their belief and had witnessed that the messenger is true and clear signs had come to them? And Allah does not guide the wrongdoing people. Those, their recompense will be that upon them is the curse of Allah and the angels and the people all together, abiding eternally therein. The punishment will not be lightened for them, nor will they be reprieved, except for those who repent after that and correct themselves. For indeed Allah is forgiving and merciful. Indeed, those who disbelieve after their belief and then increase in disbelief, never will their repentance be accepted, and they are the ones astray. Indeed, those who disbelieve and die while they are disbelievers, never would the whole capacity of the earth in gold be accepted from one of them if he would seek to ransom himself with it. For those there will be a painful punishment, and they will have no helpers. So again, you have the penalty being referred to the hereafter. And it mentions these people dying. وَمَاتُوا وَهُمْ كُفَّارٌ. And it doesn't say وَقُتِلُوا وَهُمْ كُفَّارٌ. They're killed while they are kuffar. So the Quran does make a distinction between dying and killing in other verses. In the verse about the Prophet ﷺ, in Surah Al-Imran also, وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ الرُّسُلُ أَفَإِن مَّاتَ أَوْ قُتِلَ انقَلَبْتُمْ عَلَىٰ أَعْقَابِكُمْ. Muhammad is not but a messenger. Other messengers have passed on before him. So if he was to die or be killed, would you turn back on your heels to unbelief? So there are two alternatives being mentioned here with regard to the Prophet ﷺ, dying a natural death or being killed. So the fact that dying is mentioned with regard to the apostate it carries some weight. And this point is further strengthened by the verse in Surah An-Nisa, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا ثُمَّ كَفَرُوا ثُمَّ آمَنُوا ثُمَّ كَفَرُوا ثُمَّ ازْدَادُوا كُفْرًا لَمْ يَكُنِ اللَّهُ لِيَغْفِرَ لَهُمْ وَلَا لِيَهْدِيَهُمْ سَبِيلًا. Okay, this is explicit. It's mentioning a person who believed and then disbelieved and then believed again and then disbelieved. If the penalty is death, how would he have an opportunity to believe again or to disbelieve a second time? Also, with regard to this topic, Allah mentions in a number of places that the person who commits apostasy or who disbelieves, and he's doing harm to himself. He's not harming Allah. In other words, he will not be able to frustrate the plan of Allah. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ اشْتَرَوُا الْكُفْرَ بِالْإِيمَانِ لَنْ يَضُرُّوا اللَّهَ شَيْئًا وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Indeed, those who purchase disbelief in exchange for faith, never will they harm Allah at all, and for them is a painful punishment. Okay, the only verse that mentions a worldly punishment for apostasy is verse 74 from Surah Tawbah. يحلفون بالله ما قالوا ولقد قالوا كلمة الكفر وكفروا بعد إسلامهم وهموا بما لم ينالوا. Okay, the verse then goes on to say, وإن يتولوا يعذبهم الله عذابا أليما في الدنيا والآخرة وما لهم في الأرض من ولي ولا نصير. They swear by Allah that they did not say anything against the Prophet ﷺ, while they had in fact said a word of disbelief and disbelieved after their pretense of Islam and planned that which they were not able to achieve. Okay, the verse goes on to say, but if they turn away, Allah will punish them with a painful punishment in this world and the hereafter. Okay, so he's mentioning Allah is the one who's going to do it to them. And there will not be for them on earth any protector or helper. Now, with regard to something like making war on Allah and His Messenger, there's a specific penalty mentioned there. That's a had penalty. إنما جزاء الذين يحاربون الله ورسوله ويسعون في الأرض فسادا أن يقتلوا أو يصلبوا أو تقطع أيديهم وأرجلهم من خلاف أو ينفوا من الأرض. These are specific penalties. And the believers are expected to carry those penalties out on those who wage war on Allah and His Messenger and wreak havoc in the earth. They should be killed or crucified or their hands and feet cut off on opposite sides or exiled. So the fact that it's the penalty here with regard to apostasy, which is not linked to hiraba, fighting against the Muslims, the fact that it was left unspecified and that it was related to Allah, that Allah is the one who's going to be punishing them, is significant. This is some of the Quranic evidence on the issue. If we look to the Sunnah, this is where the apparent support for the death penalty for apostasy comes. There are two verbal statements of the Prophet ﷺ, and then we have to compare that with his actions. So the famous hadith reported by al-Bukhari, not by Muslim, but by Abu Dawood, Nasa'i, and some others, on the authority of Abdullah bin Abbas, "Man baddala deenahu faqtuluh." Whoever changes his religion, kill him. Okay, there's two points about this statement. The first is that it's a completely blanket statement. Again, the word man. Man is min adat al-umum. Whoever. Okay? So, according to the apparent meaning of this statement, whoever changes his religion should be killed. Now, obviously, the apparent meaning cannot be intended, because if a Jew or a Christian accepts Islam in a Muslim state, what are we supposed to do with him? Cut his head off? No. So the apparent meaning is not intended. Okay, so the majority opinion then was that the import of the statement is related to a Muslim who leaves Islam. And that is related to the second verbal hadith, a statement of the Prophet ﷺ. The hadith of Abdullah bin Mas'ud, لا يحل دم امرئ مسلم يشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأني رسول الله إلا بإحدى ثلاث الثيب الزاني والنفس بالنفس والتارك لدينه المفارق للجماعة. It is not lawful to take the life of a Muslim who bears witness that there is no God but Allah and that I am the messenger of Allah, except in one of three cases: a married adulterer, a life for a life, in other words, someone who kills someone should be executed. And even that's not a had penalty per se, because this hadith has the wording of what is lawful. It's not a command. So with regard to retaliation for murder, that's up to the near relatives of the victim. If they choose, they can ask for the death penalty if it's intentional murder. Or they can take blood money in exchange for forgiving the person and foregoing the death penalty. Or it's even possible for them to forgive the person without any recompense. And then the third category, it says, وَالتَّارِكُ لِدِينِهِ, and then it doesn't stop there. It adds a second condition, الْمُفَارِقُ لِلْجَمَاعَةِ. The person who leaves his religion, who repudiates the community. He has separated himself from the community. Okay? He has switched his allegiance. Now, this hadith was, by variant wordings, was also reported by Uthman ibn Affan and by Aisha radiallahu anha. And in a narration that was collected by Imam al-Nasa'i, by an isnad whose narrators are all thiqat, reliable narrators, there is another condition attached, or perhaps a clarification, we could say, of the third category. It says, أو رجل يخرج من الإسلام يحارب الله عز وجل ورسوله فيقتل أو يصلب أو ينفى من الأرض. Or a man who leaves Islam and makes war on Allah and His Messenger, he is either killed or crucified or expelled from the land. Okay, now with regard to the classical positions on this issue, we know that women, according to the Hanafi position and some of the other scholars of Iraq, they held the position that the general wording of the hadith, man baddala dinahu faqtuluh, that it's not intended, and that is restricted not only to people who leave Islam. It's not people who leave Islam, it's men who leave Islam. So they said that a woman who leaves Islam is not to be executed for that. And they used for that the hadiths that relate to the prohibition of killing women in the course of battle. And in some of the, when you look at the implications of, okay, why would that be relevant here? Then the issue of a woman's ability to fight becomes relevant. So now let's just look at we have the statements of the Quran, we have the statements, these two statements from the Prophet ﷺ, and now what did the Prophet ﷺ do? What was his actions? There's a number of hadiths that are quoted to support the idea of killing an apostate. But if we look at them, we see that in every one of them there is some other act that's also associated with the penalty. The most famous hadith in that regard is the story of the Urayniyin. And in some narrations that they were from the tribe of Uqul. They were people who accepted Islam, they made hijrah to Medina, and they found the climate very difficult. They got sick. Basically everybody who moved to Medina got sick. The muhajirs from Mecca, they all came down with this fever. It was an unhealthy climate. So they complained to the Prophet ﷺ, and he advised them to go out in the pasture lands outside the city and to drink the milk and the urine of the camels, and that would be a cure for their ailment. They did that and they were cured. And once they were feeling spry and lively, they killed the camel herd that the Prophet ﷺ had assigned to take care of the camels. And then they fled. They stole the camels and they went back home. So the Prophet ﷺ sent people after them. And they caught them, they brought them back, and they were executed according to the stipulations in the verse of Hiraba, making war on Allah and His Messenger. So it wasn't simply apostasy. The same thing applies. The only situation where we have people who were executed by the Prophet ﷺ were those who had done something else. Now there's also a hadith in Al-Bukhari, the apparent meaning of it indicates that the Prophet ﷺ didn't kill an apostate. There was a Bedouin, same situation. He made hijrah to Medina. It says he came to the Prophet ﷺ, وَبَايَعَهُ عَلَى الْإِسْلَامِ. He gave him an oath of allegiance on Islam. That was the basis of his oath. And then he got sick in Medina, like everybody does, and he came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, أَقِلْنِي عَنْ بَيْعَتِي. He said, release me from my oath. And the Prophet ﷺ refused. And then he came back the next day and he said, release me from my oath. And he refused. This happened 3 times, and he was turned down 3 times. After the 3rd time, he just packed his bags and went home. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Medina expels its impurities the way bellows drive out impurities from molten iron. So Ibn Hajar, in commenting on the hadith, he said the apparent meaning of it is that he asked him to excuse him from his oath of allegiance in its entirety, because it explicitly mentions bay'ahu ala al-Islam. And this was the position of Qadi Iyad in commenting on the same hadith, and he explicitly stated that's the meaning. The other scholars, the other side, they say no, it meant that he just wanted to be excused from the obligation of hijrah. One final point, Abdullah bin Abi Sarh, he was a foster brother of Uthman radiallahu anh. And he became a Muslim, he came to Medina. The Prophet ﷺ dictated revelation to him, and he wrote it down. And for some reason or another, he apostated, and he fled to Mecca. And when the Muslims came to Mecca, and the conquest of Mecca, Fathu Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ, he had ordered for a certain number of individuals to be executed. And Abdullah bin Abi Sarh was one of those. And he came to Uthman, and he said, help me. So Uthman came to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, forgive this man. And the Prophet ﷺ, he maintained the silence for a long time. And then Uthman repeated his request, and the Prophet ﷺ accepted it, and the man renewed his Islam. I mean, he took the Shahada again. Okay, the relevance of it to our topic of is Islam, I mean, is the penalty for apostasy a had penalty or ta'zir? If it was a fixed penalty, then Uthman would not have had the right to intercede. When Osama ibn Zayd tried to intercede with the Prophet ﷺ on behalf of a woman who had stolen something, he said to Osama, "Atashfa'u fi hadd min hududillah?" He said, are you going to try to make intercession to waive a penalty, a fixed penalty from the fixed penalties of Allah? So Osama, he said, oh, please, I made a big mistake. Please ask Allah to forgive me. And that didn't happen with Uthman and Abdullah bin Abi Sarh.